Choosing a younger woman over an old hag like you is only natural, right? If I'm an old hag, then you're an old geezer. I wanted to snap back with that but held it in, glaring at my husband's smirking face. True, I'm older than my husband and the oldest in this house. The young woman my husband referred to, almost twice my junior, is none other than our daughter-in-law. Yes, the person my husband had an affair with is our son's wife. And she, being called a young woman, seemed pleased, clinging to my husband's arm and looking down on me with disdain. Really, don't you feel sorry for her? A woman who marries only to have her husband turn out like this, it's no wonder she'd have an affair or two. My husband said dismissively, referring to our son. Such heartless words for our son who had just received a terminal diagnosis. I was about to yell, but a calm voice spoke from behind me. Hey, Mom. Our son, caught in this mess, had a surprisingly serene face. But his eyes betrayed an uncontainable anger. I need your help with something. Okay? My name is Kelly, a 55-year-old office worker. My husband Nick is younger, 51 years old. We met 30 years ago through a hobby, mountaineering. There was a group with a wide age range, from 20s to 60s, and a roughly equal gender distribution. Mountaineering is great, isn't it? Why did you start, Kelly? Nick was approachable, bright, and easy to talk to even on first meeting. I started because of my dad. Inspired by your dad, that's nice. What about you, Nick? Why did you start mountaineering? Well, if there's a mountain, a guy just wants to climb it. What's that about? His open, indiscriminate nature quickly made us friends. How old are you, Kelly? Me? I'm 26. My type is a mature woman. Really? That means you're younger, right? How old are you? 22. So young. It's just a 4-year difference. It's quite a difference. Is it? Our conversation was so enjoyable. That day, the day we met, he asked me out on the mountain summit. Actually, I fell for you at first sight. My heart had already been his during the climb, so I immediately agreed. From that day, we were a couple, sharing our passion for mountaineering. We enjoyed dates and never running out of things to talk about. A year into our relationship, I found out I was pregnant. This led to our marriage. After marrying, I realized Nick wasn't much of a saver. He was a hard-working employee, but at 23, he earned less than me and tended to spend his paycheck immediately. Around my 9th month of pregnancy, I took maternity leave. Though I received some salary during this period, it was less than when I was working. We heavily relied on my nearby parents for financial support. They helped not just with money but in various ways, and I gave birth to a healthy boy. We named our son Joshua and raised him with great care. I returned to work before Joshua turned 1. Balancing work and childcare was challenging, but we supported our family through both our jobs. Joshua grew up healthy and lively. In a blink, he turned 24. After graduating from college, he lived on his own and seemed to work hard. One day, he called saying, "I have something important to discuss with you, Mom and Dad. Please keep next Sunday free." It was that Sunday. My husband and I were both nervous. When the doorbell rang and I opened the door, there stood Joshua and a woman about his age. She was a demure, pretty woman. "Mom, Dad, let me introduce you. This is Nancy, whom I'm currently dating." "Nice to meet you. I'm Nancy," she said, bowing slightly. "What a charming lady," my husband remarked, and Joshua beamed happily. "We're planning to get married," Joshua announced. Nancy was apparently Joshua's co-worker. Hearing about my son getting married filled me with a deep sense of joy. Gosh, Joshua is at the age to get married. What's with that nostalgic tone, Mom? So, what do you like about Nancy? I asked straightforwardly, though it felt a bit bold. She's usually reserved, but speaks her mind when it matters. She even stands up to me, her coworker, without hesitation. That's because Nick is. Let's not start with the critiques. My husband interjected, and everyone burst into laughter. Watching their affectionate interaction filled me with happiness. After Joshua and Nancy left, I spoke to my husband. She's a wonderful woman, isn't she? Yes, quite charming. You keep saying charming a lot. I sighed. Do I still look young? You look younger than your age, but don't take Nancy's words too seriously. She was just being polite. I was 52 and my husband was 48, but he seemed thrilled with Nancy's compliment about his looks. 2 years after the marriage proposal, 26-year-old Joshua and his wife came over. We're thinking of buying our own home and need to save up. Could we move in with you? Move in? I don't mind, but you have Nancy's consent, right? Our house is spacious with extra rooms. There was enough space for Joshua and his wife. However, I doubted any daughter-in-law would be thrilled about living with her mother-in-law so soon. When I asked, it turned out Nancy was the one who suggested it. In a later discussion with all 4 of us, Nancy seemed genuinely excited about living together. I asked my husband, "What do you think, honey?" He looked delighted. If they live with us, we can see our grandchildren right away if they're born. Nodding in agreement. I understood his enthusiasm for potential grandchildren. We all agreed to start living together. I was still working, so I wasn't home much. Nancy quit her job after getting married and became a full-time homemaker. She took care of the house during the day. She has been a great help, taking on responsibilities like receiving deliveries and taking care of laundry and meal preparations. Thankfully, our limited time together meant fewer conflicts, and life was smooth. But this arrangement didn't last long. About a year in, we discovered Joshua had a disease weakening his immune system. The dinner on the day of the diagnosis was silent. I tried to accept it, but couldn't help fearing the worst, leading to a sleepless night. After the diagnosis, Nancy started working to help with Joshua's medical expenses and was frequently out. As Joshua's condition worsened, he eventually needed a wheelchair. We all supported him and decided to rely on a daytime caregiver. One evening while I was washing dishes, my daughter-in-law, Nancy, had a request. I have sudden work tomorrow. But it's the day I'm supposed to take Joshua to the hospital. I tried to say no, but they insisted I must come in. Kelly, can you take Joshua to the hospital for me? Of course. Thanks. Oh, Mom's taking me tomorrow? Joshua's frail voice came from the living room connected to the kitchen. I hurried over to listen. After the hospital, can we go shopping? There's something I want to buy. Sure. Why don't we grab some pancakes after shopping? There's that new pancake place, right? Nick suggested, browsing on his phone. Sounds good. Let's have lunch then. The next day, I pushed Joshua's wheelchair to the hospital. It was a busy Monday, and the crowded hospital seemed to tire Joshua. So, we decided to skip shopping and head home early. Joshua told me in the car that he wanted to buy a gift for Nancy. To thank her for always supporting him. But it's pathetic. I can't even shop for what I want. And we didn't get it today. He muttered sadly, and I felt a lump in my throat hearing his words. Your intention is enough, I assured him, but he didn't respond. So I tried to sound cheerful. How about we make some pasta for lunch? We arrived home much earlier than planned. To my surprise, Nancy's car was there, though she was supposed to be at work. Huh? Did Nancy not go to work? As I got out of the car and passed Nancy's car, I saw something horrifying. Inside her car were Nancy and Nick, who was supposed to be at work. Joshua, can you go inside first? I asked, helping him into the house. After he was inside, I saw Nick through the car window. Crouching down, fumbling with something. Peering in, I caught him trying to buckle his belt in the cramped car over Nancy. The car seat was reclined, and they were in a compromising position. Not at all like a father-in-law and daughter-in-law. I knocked on the window and told them to come inside.
So, what exactly were you two doing in that tight space?
I confronted them in a room separate from where Joshua rested. The situation was undeniably suspicious. But they didn't seem flustered. Waiting for one of them to speak, Nick snorted. "It's obvious, isn't it?
What else would a man and a woman do in a cramped car?"
His brazen response shocked me. I saw my husband with such an ugly expression for the first time. His attitude and words instantly made my blood boil.
"Man and woman? You're her father-in-law, and there's a significant age gap."
Age is just a number. It's all about looks.
I'm younger looking than sick Joshua, aren't I?
He's pale and all.
You think that way?
I was just helping Nancy. She can't be intimate with her immobile husband. Poor Nancy, crying secretly knowing Joshua's life is short. I just offered her some comfort.
You just took advantage of her. And Nancy, are you okay with this?
I confronted my son's wife, who was standing beside my husband with a look of dissatisfaction on her face.
I want to enjoy my life too.
Work, hospital visits, house chores. I hate it.
Why should I suffer while others my age have fun?
Right, Nancy is still young. It's sad she's stuck caring for a sick person and working every day.
Shut up!
I yelled at Nick. Nick has money and health, so he can fulfill my desires. I've decided to switch to him. Nancy declared, and I was repulsed by their callousness.
So, you've been involved since Joshua got sick?
Yes. Nick admitted nonchalantly.
Is all this true?
The living room door opened, and there was Joshua, trembling with rage, looking at them.
Is it true? While I'm suffering from illness, have you two been having a good time?
Joshua confronted them loudly. However, it was the body of my son, weakened to its limits. His weakened body must have struggled to shout. I went to him and put my hand on his back.
Joshua doesn't deserve to be yelled at.
Nancy raised her voice.
I thought I'd be happy after marrying. I quit my job for this, but ended up working again. No trips, no shopping, just hospital, work, and home. I've been sacrificing my desires for your care.
That's right, Joshua. You should thank Nancy first. Joshua clenched his fists. I couldn't hold back and scolded Nancy.
What kind of attitude is that? We have a caregiver during the day, and at night it's mainly me and your father taking care of you. And you say you had to work, but we were the ones paying most of the living expenses. The treatment costs were coming out of Joshua's insurance.
Nancy's words sounded as if she had sacrificed everything, but that wasn't the case. She hadn't been taking care of Joshua at all. She was out working during the day, and at night, it was mostly me who looked after him. Even house chores like cooking and laundry, which we were supposed to share equally after she started working, ended up being mostly on me because she was overwhelmed at her new job. I had been supporting them financially and taking care of everything. At times, I felt like nothing more than a maid. Yet, I had cooperated, considering her plight of having a husband with a life-threatening illness at a young age. And to be treated this way was unbearable. Nick, however, seemed completely oblivious to my feelings.
Looks like Nancy was quite dissatisfied with a lot of things.
Nick said with a vile smirk.
You can't satisfy your wife with that body, right? A husband who's not only broke but also a burden. It's only natural for her to leave a sick husband like you.
Right.
Don't make me the villain. The bad one is you for getting sick.
I couldn't contain my anger at a daughter-in-law who didn't provide care, didn't contribute to household chores, and didn't bring in any income. And my disgust for Nick, who, despite being a father, could insult his suffering son to such an extent.
Enough from both of you.
Why did Joshua, who had been planning to buy a gift for his wife after his hospital visit, have to endure this? I was infuriated.
I want a divorce.
I told Nick.
I'm divorcing you. That suits me fine. I'd rather be with a young and pretty girl than an older woman. I'll give you your divorce.
Nick replied, putting his arm around Nancy and snorting.
Nancy, you should divorce him too.
Joshua said to her in a trembling voice. I expected her to agree, but she immediately refused.
No. If I divorce you now, I won't get your inheritance, right? After all the hardship I've endured, I deserve it. What are you saying? Please divorce my son and do whatever you want with that man.
I pleaded. It was as if she was waiting for Joshua to pass away sooner.
No. But I'll leave this house. I'll come back for the inheritance once you're gone,
Nancy said, and she and Nick quickly packed and left. Joshua maintained his composure beside me, still in shock.
Mom, I need your help with something,
Joshua said firmly.
I'll never forgive those two. There's a quiet rage burning inside me.
I could see a quiet flame of anger burning within my son. Unlike me, he possessed a calmness in the face of it all, which was truly admirable.
What do you have in mind?
Yes.
I'll do whatever it takes to help you, Joshua.
Can you listen to my plan then?
Of course.
Joshua and I devised a plan. Later, only Nick returned home. He brought the divorce papers, and Nick and I eventually finalized our divorce. As for Nancy, she never responded to any of our calls. 5 years later, Joshua passed away. I always wished he could have outlived me. His funeral was attended by many, including medical staff and colleagues from his previous job. Among the many attendees, I spotted two faces I hadn't forgotten in 5 years. My ex-husband and Nancy.
Oh, you're here.
They both looked shabby. Nick, who had always boasted about his looks, appeared older than his age, his cheeks sunken. Nancy had lost her initial charm, her face hardened. They were both wearing worn-out clothes. As soon as they saw me, their eyes lit up like cats who had found their prey.
I'm here for the inheritance,
Nancy said to me as if it were the most natural thing in the world.
I deserve to inherit because of all the hardship I went through caring for him. That's right. There should be an inheritance. You're not planning to keep it all to yourself, are you? A child's property should be inherited by their parents. Just because we divorced after an affair doesn't mean our parent-child relationship is over. I'm entitled to Joshua's inheritance too. Hurry up and give us the money! This man has no savings, and these past 5 years have been really tough. But I've endured it all, thinking I'd get Joshua's inheritance. The affair was 5 years ago, so you've forgiven us by now, right?
Nancy's transformation was laughable. She used to sweetly call his name, and now she refers to him so casually. The only reason my ex-husband had money to spend freely was because I gave him an allowance. Since my salary was higher than his, I've been giving him money every month since we got married. I didn't want to risk him hiding his salary or not contributing to household expenses. So I gave him a bit more than necessary to avoid wasteful spending or hiding money. Despite divorcing me and marrying a younger woman, his nature hadn't changed. He was still no good at saving money and spent whatever he had. I bet life has been quite hard for the two of them since they left so boldly. I wonder where they found out about Joshua's death. They're really like hyenas.
Come on, give us the inheritance. You must have savings for a house, right? Don't think you can use it all up. I'm taking that along with the inheritance.
They pressed me, but I stood my ground and said firmly,
There's no inheritance for you too. What do you mean? This is what I mean.
I showed them a document. Their faces turned ashen upon seeing it.
Give it to me.
Nancy snatched the document, trembling.
Donation certificate.
She read slowly.
Yes, Joshua recently realized his time was near and donated his entire fortune to a medical research institution. This is the certificate. All of Joshua's inheritance you were after is gone. No way! What was the point of enduring these 5 years?
She seemed to have grown tired of Nick, staying with him only for the sake of Joshua's inheritance.
Then give me the money. I'm the one who took care of your son. I took him to the hospital, worked part-time, and sacrificed myself for him. I deserve to be paid.
Nancy demanded money from me.
There's something I haven't been able to tell you because you two have been missing.
Let me tell you now.
What?
Nancy raised her eyebrows. I revealed another truth.
You're no longer Joshua's wife. The divorce has already been finalized. So, you don't have any right to his inheritance. What? That's a lie.
Nancy was shocked. The truth is, on the day Nick and Nancy's affair was exposed, Joshua recorded their conversation from the other side of the door. After they left our home, Joshua and I took the recording to a lawyer. We explained that Joshua wanted to divorce his wife, who had become unreachable due to her affair. The lawyer suggested a court process. Public notice was given, and with Nancy absent, the trial began. Joshua's divorce was easily granted.
So, Nancy, even though you've been acting like Joshua's wife, you've been a stranger for a long time. A stranger? Such a foolishness. To think you've been living with another man for 5 years.
If Nick truly loved Nancy, he might have changed his heart and urged her to divorce and remarry him. But in the end, Nick just wanted a young woman who would provide him with physical comfort and care. Neither of them made any effort to change their situation, simply waiting eagerly for Joshua to pass away. That's why Nancy didn't realize she was single, and Nick didn't want to let go of his young wife who catered to him. I sighed heavily and turned to face them.
Furthermore, I'm demanding compensation. You'll have to pay for the damages. Damages? You can't be serious. We're already in debt. We thought Joshua's inheritance would clear our debts, but we can't pay any damages. Exactly. Why are you demanding damages now? I always intended to demand compensation. You two just disappeared before I could. Now that you're back, of course, I'm going to ask for it. By the way, I've recorded everything you've said since you arrived. So, don't even try to deny the affair now.
I informed them, and they were so infuriated by my words that they lunged at me.
Hey! What are you doing?
Fortunately, medical staff and company employees present at the scene restrained them, so I wasn't hurt.
Are you all right? Yes, thank you.
While being restrained, Nick and Nancy continued to yell, "Give us the money." Then I heard the sound of a police car, and officers arrived.
You two are suspected of fraud. Please come with us to the station.
Someone at Joshua's funeral must have called the police. Nick and Nancy were taken away by the police. Later, I learned from the police that they had been involved in fraud to repay their debts and had other criminal charges against them. They would be spending some time behind bars. I was surprised they had stooped to fraud. The two who had hurled insults at Joshua now faced social consequences. Nancy wasted her valuable 20s, despite all her complaints. While I sympathized with her for having a husband who fell ill young, everything else was her own doing. I felt no pity for the two who had even resorted to criminal acts. I didn't know the extent of their debts, but they might be chased by repayments until their deaths. I might not get the damages I demanded, but I didn't care anymore. If they were suffering that much, let them suffer out of my sight. It's been years since Joshua passed away. But I still receive thank you letters from patients every day, grateful for Joshua's donation. I read these letters and feel proud of my son's choice. His donation, which never reached the two who awaited his death, is helping many people. Joshua apologized for leaving me with nothing when he told me about his plan. But years after his funeral, I still receive letters of gratitude. His choice continues to nourish others' lives. How proud I am. I am truly fortunate to have had such a wonderful son. I continued working after retirement. My job is fulfilling and enjoyable. I'm glad I acquired specialized qualifications and knowledge when I was younger. Back then, I was desperate to raise my salary for Joshua's sake, studying hard for certifications. I have enough assets to live on my own, and I owe it all to Joshua. I still keep up with my hobby of mountain climbing. Joshua, thank you. I'll make sure to enjoy the rest of my life. Wait for me there. I whispered to his smiling photo.